All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the Pantheon Rise of the Fallen December Q&A. We will be answering questions tonight that we have gathered from the community. Most of the question answering will be coming from our fearless leader, creative director, Chris Joppa Perkins. We also have the fabulous David Nafeel Beach and me, Jamie Savanya Henry. I'm pretty awesome too. Ben Dean is AFK tonight, so stop does. So he left me with some notes for some of his stuff, but we've got Joppa here, so he'll be able to get to most everything. So let's get started with some questions. All right, let's hit some of the easier ones first. Will alpha pledges be able to take screenshots or record their sessions and submit them for approval for posting? Ben Dean said, no, not at this time.
He put like what, 6 or 7 heart emojis and a smiley face and a hand over the mouth emoji after that, right?
Yeah, something like that. um, do we intend to hold monthly test sessions for alpha pledges? We've talked a little bit about that. You want to answer that, Joppa?
Yeah. So one of the first orders of business that we have coming in the new year is to revisit what our criteria for alpha launch is. We want to take a fresh stock of where we're at, the steps we've made towards not only the always on testing that our PA testers are doing, but then also bringing the alpha pledgers in for this alpha pledge event and looking to do that more commonly. We just want to take stock of where we're at and what our alpha launch criteria. I don't want to say what it is because it has been what it has been for a while now, but we're just going to take a fresh look at that, and depending on where we land there, that will determine at least some measure of how we handle the alpha pledge events going forward. But we're going to also be using this first session just to measure our preparedness as well. Got a lot of players coming in for this, and so it's really exciting to see how everything's going to hold up, and that will also affect the cadence of things. But we'll definitely have more info on what to expect there pretty soon after this first one's done.
That rolls right into the follow-up of what would be considered successful. What are we looking for this 24-hour session?
Well, I mean, my answer to this is for me, the highest metric of success is alpha pledgers enjoying the experience. I mean, pretty much full stop. It's I mean, I honestly don't care if a single bug report comes in from alpha pledges. You all have waited an insanely long time to play Pantheon. I really just want the focus to be simply playing the game on this first time in. And success for me is when this 24-hour session ends, that you don't want to stop playing. Like that's what I'm looking and hoping to hear. That is success for me. And we'll look forward to then having those follow-up conversations. What made you feel that way? What aspects of the game did you love? What are the things that we really should be leaning into more and more? Success also means, though, for those who may not enjoy the experience, that we also have an opportunity to get insight from them. Why is that? What can we improve? What can we polish? That all of that is very invaluable to us. So I would just sum it up that way. In terms of like truly technical observations, things that we are actually going to be observing and looking at, primarily we're looking at performance, we're looking at stability. We're going to be monitoring a lot of the back-end systems to see how those hold up. But I hope this is an opportunity for the alpha pledgers especially to come in and really just focus on enjoying the experience.
Yeah, and I did get some information from Rizel about the upgrades that are happening to accommodate the alpha pledges. And for one, we're adding 9 additional servers. Is that correct, Joppa?
Yep, that's correct.
And we are making a major upgrade to our persist system that Neff sort of broke. Is that fair to say?
What?
I wouldn't say that's fair to
No,
say.
I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. So, what it is, and I got all this from Rizal, and he said, feel free to tag him in Discord, and he will answer whatever questions he can, but he wasn't available to answer these. But our database needed some improvements, and that became obvious when crafting items were not persisting and things itemizing wasn't persisting as well as it should have been. And so what time better than now to make that upgrade so that we can build upon it? Do you have any thoughts there, Joppa?
It's such a deep. There's so much to share here.
There really
it's
is.
Yeah, it's one of like the last places in the code base that was truly like vestigial, if you will, like things that when I first joined the team in like 2014, there were aspects of the persist code that were still back from then, from those days. It served us up until now, but up until now, we've never had, the amount of players in. And not only that, but yes, the crafting system does rely heavily on some dynamic generation of items and stats that are affected by player choice to some degree. And so it introduced a new layer, and that layer has been struggling with the persist system, but it's so much deeper than that. It's inventory, it's corpses, it's just player data and the integrity of player data. I mean, there's so many things that this touches. It's a huge step towards just that robust kind of like load bearing back end and infrastructure of the game that you would expect in a MMORPG scale launched product. So super excited about it, and we're about to slam the crap out of it here in a few days.
Yeah, Rizal's pretty excited about it. Most of it should be in for Saturday, he said. So, yeah, well, it's not something that the players are going to notice in a huge way, but for the back end, it's going to mean the world.
Well, they'll notice if it's not working. So
God.
it's really important that it works.
Yes, we need it to work. He also mentioned that one of the features that we're going to have just for test, this is not going to be a launch feature, is that you will be able to carry your character over from server to server during test. So if you make your character on one server, you can pop on over to another server if that's where your friends are. But yeah, for reasons of gameplay, that will not work for launch, but it'll be there for you guys.
Just so that's clear and like fully understood, you will pick a server, create a character, you can log on to any other server, and that character will be there to play. But if you want to play with friends, you guys need to be playing on the same server.
Awesome. Thank you. Will there be a wipe before this incoming Saturday? And do you want to talk a little bit about the update that's happening?
Yes, there will be a wipe. And a lot of that is to support a lot of the database changes that have been made. But there are so many significant gameplay and itemization and class balance and content tuning updates and the whole 9 yards coming in as well, that even if we weren't on the tail end of significant database and persist changes, we would still be doing a wipe and prep for this build just as part of the natural cycle.
Yeah, it kind of gets everybody started out on a level playing field too. I know that we have a lot of VIPs who have been waiting to get their alpha friends in, and this is your chance to play together. All right, now on to some design questions, which is Jabba's bread and butter. I got a lot of these questions from VIP, so let's start with this one. Is it currently a public design goal for launch, the out of combat regeneration of all player resource pools, such as health, mana, and endurance, will be a percentage based regeneration per tick or a fixed value regeneration per tick?
Love this. I love the shift in like these questions.
This is business.
This is like down. This is down to business. That's right. Yeah. So it flat rate. Flat rate is the way when it comes to that. I think it keeps things more interesting generally when you're working with flat rates on things like regeneration and the way that that can be modified through itemization. I do tend to like flat rates better, just in general. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, we have a resting system, somewhat like what you're used to, in even a game like EverQuest, which I think a lot of people have and share that come from, where you would sit down. Sitting down would be the fastest way to regenerate health, because your ticks are a little bit higher when you sit down. But certainly with meditate, it was exponentially faster by degrees of magnitude, orders of magnitude, to sit down and meditate. So you do sit down in Pantheon to rest. The resting mechanic, one of the things I think is really cool about it is that the longer you sit, the longer you rest, the greater your health and mana regeneration ticks become over a period of time. And so the goal there is that it would make the decision of when you start resting, and perhaps even more importantly, when you stop resting, because after you've rested for several seconds, those ticks of mana and health you're getting back are larger. And so the longer you keep resting, the more that is going to increase. And so when you stop resting is actually significant, because you have to sit down and build back up to that point again. But yeah, working with flat rates.
Is that going to apply to buffs too?
Yeah, so buffs and item effects and things like that will likely be somewhat of a mixture. Typically, shorter duration, more powerful abilities would be not guaranteed, but would be more likely to lean into that percent value at times. Whereas longer term effects will stay in that flat value realm. A good example is actually the enchanters. One of the enchanter abilities currently is called Whisper of Tysire. It's part of the Whisper line. You can think of it essentially like the Clarity line for enchanters. But it's a potent ability because it improves the overall mana regen rate of the target. Not just the resting mana regen rate, but the overall mana regen rate. And the first rank of that ability increases the target's mana regen rate by a flat value of 2. So I'll give you an idea of like the kind of flat rates that we're working with and what a significant amount is versus not. So just a mana regen increase of 2 is significant enough to be appropriate enough for that first entry into that line of mana regen buffs for the enchanter.
That's a lot of information, but I know that we have some VIPs that are very excited to hear all the information. Are there still plans to later add an immersive first-person point of view where players can see weapons during attacks?
Yeah, the groundwork for that is actually done. It's in place, but it's just waiting its turn in line to get the final polish and implementation.
I'm very excited about that. All right, can we get an update on the pet system?
Yeah. So based on my conversation with Steve today, I think my best estimation is that we're a couple of weeks of work out from seeing this ready for its first rounds of testing. Now, please keep in mind, we are heading into the holiday season. So when I say a couple of weeks of work out, I don't mean a literal couple of weeks from today beyond. But I would interpret that to say you should confidently expect to see the pet system, the first pass of the pet system, the first pass of the Summoner, of the Charm ability coming online in January. Later in January would be my best estimation right now.
Okay, Q1 is going to be a very good time. Somebody asked about ogres and gnomes. We have ogres coming up next, right? How far into that are we?
Yeah, ogres are well underway. I've already been enjoying looking at a picture of the base mesh for the ogre. I'm really pleased with the proportions of it. It's a very large ogre, very large compared to the last iteration that we had. So feels very ogreish, feels very representative of the kind of scale differentiation we want to see and silhouette differentiation that we want to see, that we're able to lean into more honestly now. So yeah, I can't wait to show that off. And then gnomes, I also just saw today the our one of our concept artists, Brett, who is doing a lot of work on the actual player race concepts in the new style. Just saw the gnome orthographic concepts get submitted today. So those are following closely behind the ogre.
Oh, that's awesome. If you guys maybe hassle Bronson a little bit, maybe he'll give you a preview of what he's got going on for the ogre. Totally up to him, though. Let's talk about racial passives. Those aren't in game yet, right? What are the plan for those?
Correct. They are not in game. The only thing currently to expect with racial distinction for the time being will be, and I say will be because right now we just have humans in right now. Ogres, and gnomes, like we just talked about, are on their way soon. But as more of the races come into play, the distinction you're going to see right now is their starting stat allocations and their class choices. Down the road, my plan is that the racial passive traits and the racial active abilities will come into play once the classes and the class ability kits are more fully implemented and have matured, so that it's clearer to see the appropriate places for those racial passives and active abilities to really sit. So the racial passives are not, I'm not planning on changing those as of right now. I've reviewed those several times. There may be a couple of tweaks here and there to kind of the verbiage of what some of them are meant to do, especially with some of the like weapon skill bonuses and things like that. But the racial passives are pretty much set. I'm just not going to be bringing them to bear until the class abilities and the classes themselves are more fully implemented. But then the racial active abilities are on hold also until that we reach that point.
Yeah, and just as a reminder to the incoming alpha pledges, the human is the only race available to play right now. So keep that in mind. This is a good one for Neff. Are there plans to eventually separate crafting level and adventuring level?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I could say more, but the answer is yes.
It's for the incoming players. How does it work right now?
So right now, what we have in the game really is just the item generation, just making sure that, you know, when you put some ingredients together, that it will actually make the item that it's supposed to make. And so at the moment, all that you have is a skill requirement to be able to create that item. And because we don't have anything else to tie it to yet, that's tied to that skill cap is tied to your adventuring level. So for example, if you want to make an iron sword, you're going to have to be at least level 9 in your adventuring class in order to get your skill high enough to make an iron sword. And that's temporary. That's there because we just needed something to tie that skill cap to. Where we're ultimately headed, and this will happen sometime next year, I don't know when yet, but you'll actually have a separate crafting profession from your adventuring class. And when we implement that, then things like skill caps and other aspects of crafting will be tied to your progression in that crafting profession. instead of your progression in your adventuring class. We have to get the profession system implemented first in order to move everything over.
That's awesome. Just adding another layer of gameplay. Thank you, Bronson. I love you. All right, so we've got some tough questions incoming. How do we reconcile instancing major encounters with our stance that the greatest sense of accomplishment comes when it is shared? That's for you, Jabba.
Yeah. This is on the surface. I feel like this seems like a pretty provocative question, but I don't want to conflate it too much, because the reality is, in what we've discussed relatively recently in terms of the plans and the considerations for instancing, main boss rooms in dungeons and main boss rooms in raid zones account for a very small portion of the overall game world. We will not be instancing overland, any aspect of the overland game. The only caveat, as I've said, is on brand new server launches. We will likely do a layered instancing approach where we will shard different instances or layer different instances of the same zone when there's a huge amount of people in the very beginning, because we don't want to build a bunch of servers that are just going to become ghost towns. So other than that very specific caveat, which is a temporary measure, the overland game will not be instanced. Dungeons will not be instanced, and raid zones will not be instanced. The only exception to that being the main boss rooms in dungeons and the boss rooms of raid zones. And even then, the caveat is not in every case. There will be some open world contested main boss and raid targets as well. So with that context in mind, I just want to reiterate that the tenet, the goal, the conviction of a world and an overall experience being shared among players in an open world sense is absolutely still the goal. It's absolutely still a conviction and a something we're not going to deviate from. I do not consider, when weighed against the overall health of the game, for those very specific areas and parts of the game and game's content being instanced, to be a deviation or a departure from that overall goal.
Yeah, so this isn't an either or sort of situation. We're just using the technology that's available to us to make things easier at the onset. But it's all fluid, right?
It's all fluid.
That's good to know.
Can I just mention that I personally love the idea of contested open world bosses. I might watch too many Godzilla movies, but I just love the idea of these really big monsters that appear sometimes that players have to band together to take them down. I hope we have plenty of that. And definitely we wouldn't want to instance those things, right, Joppa?
Absolutely not. No, I mean, those things are critical. So we will have those, and we will likely have a good amount of those. It's just that there are, other cases, in specific cases, where we will we are reserving the right to use instancing in extremely thoughtful, careful, and specific cases, again relegated to those main boss rooms in certain major dungeons and those boss rooms in raid zones. That is the only case where we're talking about that right now.
And it sounds like that it ends up sort of preserving the integrity of the server population doing it this way.
Say that one more time, Seth.
It seems like it is preserving the integrity of the server population by utilizing instances.
Well, yes, and it's allowing for things like we've talked so much about, how sacred we view that core gameplay loop. You can play Pantheon 24/7 if you want to, but if we're talking about like the actual core game time that we want to target for players to be able to log on, accomplish something, we're talking about that 2 to 3 hour time frame. And to accomplish that, you need to be able to actually schedule activities. You need to be able to schedule things that you do with your guild, with your, with your friends. And that's a really big part of that decision. Now, how long it takes you to actually make your way through the dungeon or through the raid zone to get to the location where these rooms would be. And I say rooms, I hope that doesn't cast the wrong picture. A room, in my mind, when I say room, yeah, it could be like a literal room, like Nashra's room inside of Pounder Cave that we've streamed before, or it could be room in the sense of a massive open, um, what seems to be like an overland field that's just part of a dungeon, or like an outcropping in something like the Gate in Wild's End, or the deep kind of like massive frozen cavern in the bottom of Amber Fate. That's what I mean by a room, like a boss room. It could look lots of different ways. It's essentially just the place where the raid target or the major boss target is, and that room being built in a way to support the mechanics potentially of that fight, the different environmental effects, whatever it may be. But yeah, it allows for, there to be more of an opportunity for the majority of players on the servers who push to that point to reach that level of power and skill and progress to engage with that content, and actually have the ability to plan for that to some degree and not be completely, again, not in every case. We will have, plenty of that overland, or at least not necessarily overland in every case, but contested content. And that will absolutely be subject to availability and first come, first serve, and everything that we're all, very, very used to there. But we want to have a deviation from that as well.
So then will out of group buffs persist into instanced encounters?
That's the plan right now. Yeah. If a buff lands on you, buff is able to land on you, then it should persist with you when you go in to those locations. There's a little bit of, I'm probably not going to do it right now, but we want to break down a little bit. I know some of that's leaning into like the LAS, the limited action set conversation, and how buffs are going to work. And there's something that I really want us to try, and that is a bit of a concentration or a focus type system for buffs, where you have a certain allotment for what you can actually have on you at any one time. And this is something that I had discussed with Adam a little while back when he was here. It's an idea that we never really got to incorporate, but it's something that I at least want to try. I want to try a few other things before I give a really solid hard answer on like how we're going to handle out of group buffs and buff persistence and things like that. Just a few more things that I want to try, but get more info on that soon enough.
That sounds like a good time for testers. Well, since we were since we were talking about some zones and where our mobs are going to be, you want to talk a little bit about where AVP is right now and what you guys are doing with that?
Yeah. So we've had a lot of art updates happening in AVP. We've got, all the rocks being converted to the new style. They're very similar to the rocks we have in Thrown Fast. So that process is going quickly, as you can imagine. We've got several updates that have been done to Hangor to update that kind of snowy region up there with the orcs. And right now, Tim Schuler, one of our environment artists, is working on Mad Run. Just saw some updated pictures today of Mad Run. It's looking really, really good. Also spent some time on a call with Tim, with Convo today, working through the population of AVP, making sure that with all the changes and the updates that we've made in Thrown Fast, that we're applying that same logic and that same flow to AVP, and that's going really quickly. So again, expect in January to be seeing a lot more of AVP, and hopefully as early into January as possible, we can get as much of AVP playable and available as we can. We're moving into that zone as fast as we possibly can.
Ooh, more Q1 content. All right, so talking about ranged weapons and casting abilities, are spell components a consideration for spellcaster abilities? And can you talk to us a little bit about ranged weapons and their use of ammo and their containers?
Yeah, spell components are a really big deal. And don't just think about those in terms of reagents or whatever for buffs, or think of something like paradots and EQ, how they related to like the symbol line for clerics and whatnot. There will be that, but also think of it in terms of mechanical reagents and things like that as well. So I've been noticing we've been doing a lot of iterations on the Enchanter, especially the Enchanter crowd control, and there's been a lot of comparisons to how the Enchanter crowd control relates to something like a rogue, and the rogue, the kit that rogues have to lean into crowd control and flex into crowd control a little bit. And one of the things right now that makes their traps so OP, in comparison to what they should be, is that for one thing, they don't have a reagent cost. And so if you're going to place a trap, that's going to require some items. That's going to require things that you have to be carrying on you to be able to do that. If you want to throw a corrosive brew or drink a reddened elixir, things like that, then these are things that you'll likely have to have reagents on you, even if it's just having vials on hand, vials for your poison making, vials for, various things. So the power that rogues have to flex into some of these things, I'm just using rogue as an example, there are others, but the power that they have to flex into those things somewhat indiscriminately right now is very much to a degree related to the fact that we don't have that reagent layer in place just yet. So yes, expect that to be a pretty big part of the equation for sure. And then with ammo, yes, there will be ammo, but not ammo in the sense of like stacks of ammo that deplete every time you take a shot. So instead, think of ammo as you're going to slot a single ammo item into the ammo slot as a representative of the ammo you'll be firing. And every shot inherits the stats and the special properties of that ammo item. So we're talking about unlimited quantity ammo, but your decision of what ammo to use is still going to matter because the statistics of that ammo, the special properties of it, magical properties of it, the stats that it infers to the wielder, and then also just its damage, and other base statistics will all make a difference in what ammo you use.
So there will be different qualities of ammo for
different qualities of ammo, different types of ammo in terms of their effects. Freezing arrows, burning arrows, arrows that do more damage, less damage, arrows that bypass armor more, ammos that, lots of different qualities and types of ammunition. Yeah.
That's rad.
Which is much more interesting than having to give players a 16 slot quiver that holds thousands of arrows that deplete over time. So yes.
Yeah. No. Ain't happening.
God, I agree with that. So in game specifically, is it intended that the best gear come from drops, or is it going to come from crafting? Is it going to be a mix of both?
Did you say both?
Yes.
Are you okay? All right. Both. I'm sorry, Jamie, but that's one of my
come on, guys.
I'm just saying
I didn't shart. Did you guys caught
Well, we don't know that, but what I do know is you said both, and when I hear both, I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet, but I'm glad to know it.
Dang it.
Obviously Neff and I are going to tag team this answer a little bit. He and I just had a discussion about this the other day, and I mean, honestly, I talk enough on these things. Neff, why don't you take that one?
Sure. So I think what at its base, what we're really big on is risk versus reward. If you're going to get a powerful item, we want you to have to do something challenging to get that powerful item. And so, when we think about the best items in the game, those are going to be things that involve some pretty challenging adventuring content in order to obtain. That doesn't mean that they're all going to be loot drops. But a good example of that is you go fight Nashra in Hunter's Cave, and he's probably got some really sweet stuff that he drops. He's a very difficult encounter. But maybe one of those things that he drops is also a crafting item, like a crafting material, or maybe a rare schematic or something that you can take and make something with. And so that's really, without just wasting a ton of time on details, it's kind of our vision, is that the best items in the game are going to come from either adventuring or a combination of adventuring and crafting, so that we can have that risk versus reward component. Japa, does that ring true with you?
Yeah, I really liked the conversation you and I had the other day about this very thing. I mean, ultimately, it makes sense that there would be something to gain in both spheres, and we've talked a lot about this internally, even just quite a bit on the Discord server in text with VIPs about what our goals are. We're taking steps now towards making those goals a reality, and please let us know, over the coming weeks and months, if we're making the right steps towards that balance. But yeah, I think that's well said.
So let's get to the real mystery of Terminus. How do gnomes eat and drink if they don't have bodies?
Some questions don't have answers, and some answers don't have questions.
The lore has not been written on that, guys. That's what I got from that. So, do you, Jabba, envision classes having significantly more abilities per level at launch than they currently have in pre-alpha, or is what they have kind of what you expect to see throughout all the levels to cap?
It's definitely more of a little bit more of a front loading of some things for the first 20 levels. I'm not so naive to think that no new fresh upgrades, no new fresh abilities coming online post level 20 into level 30, 40 and beyond even isn't something that's important. But I'm leaving room for epic abilities. I don't know how many of you remember. I think it was in one of the interviews that I gave at PAX a long time ago. It may have even been with Basgrim, talking about the epic abilities that classes will have and how meaningful epic weapons were, like the epic weapon quests were in EverQuest. And imagine like being able also to quest for epic abilities as well, and what that means for growing into your class power and kind of fully realizing your potential. So that those will be in play, but then also the initial front loading in the first 20 levels, and I would say even in the first 5 levels, to really allow you enough of a toolkit to engage in your role. You're certainly not going to have anywhere near all the abilities available to you in the first 5 levels, but you should have enough that you can engage in your role even that early on. And then up to level 10 and even up to level 20, you're going to be getting abilities every couple of levels that further kind of fill out your kit and give you a really good sense up by level 20 of your overall class arsenal. But then obviously there's going to be lots of upgrades to those abilities that come post level 20. And then I'm going to be weaving in very specifically and purposely several abilities that are really meaningful still to your arsenal beyond that point. So expect, tweaks and whatnot, certainly, to what level certain abilities come into play. But the paradigm there is allow classes to get into their role and act in their role earlier, and then front load a good portion of the class defining abilities and the role and play style defining abilities in those first 20 levels.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask for a feign death.
Feign Death is at level 18.
I mean, 10-ish. Come on,
We can't have it both ways.
dang it. You know, I feel like
It didn't
I
even
have.
phase you, did it?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I guess I'm gonna have to learn to play then.
I'll be honest, you were going to use it to train players anyway, so.
Maybe. All right, Neff. How will crafting quality work in the future? Will it be consistent so you can reliably make a full stack of items in a specific quality, or you want to expand upon that?
Oh gosh, yeah. So there's multiple. This touches on a few things. The first is we're not planning on having different quality levels of the same item. So I think the example that I used when you and I were talking about this the other day, Sav, was if you're making a soldier's filter, which is a type of potion, every soldier's filter you make is going to be the same. It's going to do the same thing. There's not going to be like a high quality version or a +1 version or anything like that. And as a result of that, all of those will stack. So, if you sit there and make a bunch of soldiers filters, you'll have a big stack of soldiers filters. That being said, we're not trying to make a game where you carry around stacks of items and just go through them like crazy. Even with our food, the concept that we're shooting for is that you might carry around several different types of food for different scenarios. Maybe you've got some that helps you if you're going into a really cold area like Hangor, or maybe you've got some others that help you if you're just out there gathering, or maybe even more that help you if you're down in the depths of a dungeon. We want there to be a variety of different items, and we want them to all be meaningful and valuable. We don't want players to feel like they have to carry around or that they should carry around a big stack of the same thing all the time. And then the final part of that is also that we don't want our consumable items to overshadow class abilities or to become crutches that players feel like they have to have. If you go on a raid, you have to have the fire resist potion or whatever. We don't want it. We don't want it to end up like that, where these things begin to be looked at as a requirement or as a necessity. We want them to be useful. We want them to be interesting. We want them to be potent. But we also want you to be able to go without them and still have a chance to succeed. So, I mean, there's a lot more I could probably touch on there, but I hope that helps answer the question that was being asked. We're not out to make people depend on items, and we don't really want to support. I'll say support, but we don't really want to encourage mass consumption of stuff.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the whole idea that Pantheon is more aiming to be thoughtful, and the crafting is thoughtful. Jabba, do you have a timeline for getting the auction house into PA?
No timeline on that just yet. And like I said last time or time before, the MMO currently does not have the same kind of need for that as we were doing with the testing mode that we had just recently. And so it's going back into its former place in line, something that will be coming online much later into alpha, most likely. Once we just need more of the world. We need more of the world in place. We need more areas, more regions. We need more players. Just need a little bit more of that going on before we get the auction house in there.
Yeah, I've noticed that they are pretty good about getting things traded all on their own.
Yeah.
Well, we're at the end of the year, and I'm not going to ask you to pick a word for next year because we're just not going to do that.
It would be both.
God damn it. So can you tell us what we're looking at for Q1 for 2024? Give us a brief timeline on what players can expect to see coming in.
I just think it's important to really emphasize the few things that have been really hotly desired things. We've got the pet system coming online very soon. With that, we've got Summoner First Pass. We've got Charm coming into play, which obviously has massive implementations.
There's the word,
I don't
implementations.
often missay words, so that's on me. I think it's from leaning too much into the both banter. The implications for pets coming online, massive for enchanters, but also really big for NPC encounters and just content variety and things like that. With pets coming online, we also have there's a certain spooky themed class that can start maybe kind of slowly pushing the coffin lid aside. There's a lot to unpack there, but also we've got Avenger's Pass coming online in very early in the new quarter, which hey, we're all ready to get out of Throne Fast. We're more ready than you all are, if you can imagine that. But we are very ready and excited to do that. So I mean, I think without bannerizing it, those are some very important milestones that are coming down the pike very quickly. We've got a couple of new races coming in. I think the ogre little ogre reveal we did tonight puts into perspective how significant those silhouette differences are and how we're really, really trying with our armor system and everything that's needed to support it, trying to lean into having our races feel just much more distinct and interesting. So I think that's going to be a really important piece as well. And having our alpha pledgers come in, I mean, that's huge. And whatever the cadence ends up being, know that our bent, our desire is to have it be more and not less. So I'm excited to see where that takes us in the new year.
It feels like the game is in a good spot to really pick up and run at this point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right, well, we're not going to take up a ton of Java's time. You guys got a few more questions. You guys want to pick up some questions out of chat? Come on, quick.
Yes.
Sure. I mean, they were asking me questions before we started, so I can answer a few of those while we wait for more to come in.
Go ahead, Neff.
All right, let me scroll back here.
Has someone been tracking questions?
That's what Ben was for. I can't do that many things at one time.
All right, so Devil Dog asked, how is alchemy doing, and have we discovered most of the recipes yet? I'll answer the second part of that first. I think you guys have actually only discovered maybe about half of the actual recipes that are in right now. I know Vandrad was saying he'd found 9, and there are, which is actually only a third, there are 27 different things you can make with alchemy at the moment. But it seems like a lot of people haven't had a chance to discover that. And part of that is that I probably made it a little too complicated. I'm just going to come out and admit that. That it looked good on paper, but once I put it in the game for you guys to try, it's become kind of apparent that maybe it's just a little bit too complicated right now to make some of those potions. And so one of the things that you can all expect sometime in the new year is that I'll probably take another pass on alchemy and simplify it just a bit. I still want it, and until we get the discovery-based system in place that we really want, I still want there to be some challenge to it where you have to find different things and try different combinations to see what they make. But what it's got right now is maybe just a little too much there. So I am interested to know if any of you happen to make one of the offensive alchemy items, the things that you use on your enemies, how you like those items though. So if anybody happens to make one of those this weekend, love to hear about it from you.
Do we have any updates on the druid?
Druid, Ranger are just a few. So Druid minus Herode and a couple of the more complicated aspects of the class really are not far off. So I'm going to be looking at those in the new year as well. Rangers obviously need. Well, let me back up. I'm thinking ahead of my words. Obviously, I'm going to be looking at those in the new year. It's a long time. I'm going to be looking at those early Q1, and probably my focus with the pet system coming into play is going to be on Summoner first, just to really put those pets through their paces, because that's going to be the doorway for Charm. That's going to be the doorway for Necromancer, and it's going to be, the content, the game content, and NPC abilities and stuff. We're going to get a lot from that. But Druid is not going to be that heavy of a lift once those things are in place, and will probably be the next class I focus on. It's looking right now like Ranger is going to be, not intentionally. Rangers, not intentionally. I'm not trying to feed into any Ranger memes here, but it's looking like Rangers are going to end up being the last of the list. Last, certainly not least. Obviously, we're taking Rangers to new heights in Pantheon, so I'm excited to get them in. But they will likely be the final piece of the puzzle before we get a couple of other classes that have been hinted at for many years. I didn't intentionally trail off there.
Are we gonna see most of these classes in 2024?
Most, if not both of them.
That's just rude.
What's rude? What?
Anywho, so most, you say? Most, if not...
Most.
You guys are impossible. Somebody ask him to shard.
Well, yeah. I can't shard. If you're talking like... oh, never mind. That's fractalized. Sorry. Go ahead.
All right. Anything else? That's a lot of stuff coming in 2024, guys.
I mean, 2024 is a big year. There's a lot of things going to happen, and we were just mainly talking about what's coming first. I think, right, Joppa?
Yep. Oh yeah. It's a lot of momentum going into that time frame. Getting AVP online, getting Hellner Cave back in play as well, having that full kind of loop with Hangor and Mad Run in there, as multiple different dungeon places with our itemization changes that we're in the midst of. There's going to be some really, really exciting destination type items, iconic items, both dropped items, crafting materials, and crafting schematics and things like that are going to be found in these different locations. So I'm super pumped to see like player migration patterns and like where players are going once those two other zones are opened up. And then we're just a hop, skip, and a jump away from BRK. We've got Silent Plains, we've got Eastern Plains, kind of that next vista of connected zones opening up. Wild's End is pretty darn far along environmentally. There's some art conversion that needs to happen there, obviously, and then getting the NPCs in play and whatnot. But as far as the zone layout and a lot of the kind of the structural elements of the environment, it's just a lot of art conversion, really. And so, yeah, it's a lot of things rolling faster and faster. The races as well. We're obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but doing the Ogre and the Gnome, the largest race and the smallest race next, gives us really, really nice reference points for getting the rest of them done much more quickly. So it's an exciting time. So it's really exciting time. I say that a lot. It means whatever it means when it falls on your ears. But as has always been the case, the more we can show, the more the better it is, and the more real it actually proves to be. And so hoping to keep showing a ton in the next weeks and months.
Yeah, which has sort of been it for us. We've been wanting to get as much information out as possible. Speaking of information, Bronson, since you're there in chat, is there going to be some character customization coming in anytime soon? Not to put you on the spot. I don't think that I could ask about Bard, but if Joppa were to say anything about it, I can't stop him.
I think bards are like unicorns. People talk about them, but no one's ever really seen one.
Oh.
Somewhere Ben is like running for a phone, a tablet, a computer. No.
He's literally beating on the door of his neighbor's house, trying to get to a landline phone to somehow see if he can figure out a way to patch into this Discord server to say something to stop me.
Yeah, so we can just leave it at that. There's probably something to say, but we may not say anything about it right now.
I think all that needs to be said has been said. If you follow the breadcrumbs, this long heated battle that Ben and I have had over many years, all the way back again since that same PAX East Boston trip, and the things I said about Bard and Necro there, it's it was true then, it's true now. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yep, there you go. You guys gotta pay attention to these things if you want the infos. All right, well, it's been an hour. We've sucked all the juice out of this that we can, so thank you guys. Thank you, Neff. Thank you, Joppa, for joining me and answering some questions for the community.
Always happy to answer questions and talk to folks. And actually, there were a few other questions people tagged me with, and I'll answer those in the chat here in a moment for the ones that we didn't get to.
Yeah, I mean, we can leave this on for a little bit if you want.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you want. It's easier for me to talk than to type. So
yeah, go ahead. Jabba, thank you a whole lot. I know that you are super busy.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Sav. I'll hang out for a few minutes as well. It's a little dangerous to open that door, that Pandora's box, but I'll hang out for a few minutes, see what's going on.
Yeah, guys, go ahead.
Everybody be nice to Joppa and don't take advantage of him.
Yes. Yeah, that's yeah, no need. You don't need to pull any punches with me.
So what did you have, Neff? What did you want to get at?
So it looks like there were 3 or 4 questions that were asked. So Fluffy TM asked about the freeform. So with the vision of freeform provisioning, crafting, and adding in stats with ingredients, how will it work with rested health and mana regen? And will there be a difference between brews and foods with how you can add stats in? So as far as rested health and mana regen go, that's really, I'd say, TBD. It's something that it's very important that we tune it correctly, and I think we're still looking at what the right tuning for that kind of stuff is. And so depending, what we find over the coming months, that will ultimately determine what we do for crafted food and drink in terms of how they impact your regen rates. So stay tuned on that. We'll just see how that goes. As far as the difference between drinks and foods, very likely. Obviously we have to get to the point where we can build that discovery-based system that we want to have, but very likely that there will be a difference. You'll be able to do different things with drinks than you will with foods. And scrolling, there are a couple others here.
You guys are being greedy.
Oh, this is normal. So Inyal has asked, are we going to see the current recipe setup, or will once we discover them, they'll be listed in a window? So I think from a UI perspective, to answer your question there, we do want to ultimately have what I'm calling a crafter's journal, which you can think of it like a recipe book, probably with a few other aspects to it. And that might just be part of the codex where you keep all of your adventuring abilities too. But we want to have a place where, where schematics that you learn can go and not be cluttering up your inventory as items. Obviously, UI work takes a little while. It's not something that we can just, snap our fingers and do, but it is something we want to have in the future. Shamash mentioned, he asked about the ammo type. And Joppa, this might be more of a question for you. So during general discussion, it was mentioned that you could not switch between weapons. is that going from melee to different melee, or could a tank potentially switch to range on a fleeing mob? So Joppa, what's the vision for switching weapons in combat, whether you switch from one melee weapon to another, or maybe switch from melee to ranged or range to melee? How do you envision that working?
Yeah, currently right now you cannot switch weaponry, you cannot switch spells. Once you are in combat, you are essentially locked into what your current loadout is. The plan right now is that we have a loadout wizard in mind, essentially, or kind of a loadout system that allows you to pre-build certain loadouts that you can change during combat with kind of a cooldown penalty on how often you can do that. But the idea there is that you're kind of pre-building out these loadouts, not only of equipment but abilities as well, and that switching out those loadouts is how you respond to different criteria that you face, especially when it's somewhat unexpected. This feeds into one of the questions I don't think we got to about basically, there's a question about what are our thoughts on like players min-maxing the fun, the strategy, the challenge out of the game? Do we have any ideas on how to like save players from themselves? That's an interesting question. Like it comes up a lot in different flavors. How do you plan on preserving the challenge, the mystery, how do you plan on keeping players from fully figuring everything out and then min-maxing everything? And to some degree that's inevitable. But dispositions and traits and the way that they can cause unexpected situations in combat is one of the tangible ways I'm hoping we can actually answer that, like have an answer to that question, instead of just waxing on philosophically about how, well, we are confident that players aren't going to be able to figure out everything and end up being able to min-max everything. I mean, it's inevitability, but the disposition and trait system, in a game like this, challenge, actually making and keeping things challenging, eventually shifts to how often you can appropriately disrupt or surprise a player's game knowledge. That it's the deepening of game knowledge in these games that ultimately is kind of the major driving force behind things being trivialized or becoming too easy or whatever. And so the more you can disrupt that game knowledge, the more you can surprise players who have deep game knowledge, the more you potentially can maintain a sense of challenge over the long haul. So, long-winded way to come back and say there is a relationship between how easy it is for you to change weaponry, change spells, those things with the limited action set in play, and our ability to actually surprise and disrupt players. That being said, it's one of those things that over time we're going to test different ways. Once the loadout system is in place, we'll test that out. We'll see, does that accomplish the ability for players to kind of weave in between and respond to different things? Does it make it trivial, etc.? And there's a couple of other options that we can try there as well. Also, long-winded way to eventually come back and say, if you're talking about something as simple as I've got a sword and a shield equipped, but I also have a bow equipped in my range slot with an ammo item equipped in my ammo slot, then that's going to be more distance context sensitive. So you may have a warrior, for example, could actually have an actual ability that they have on their bar to use with their bow. But more often than not, you're talking about auto attack. And if you're fighting something and they get out of auto attack range, then you would be switching to your bow ultimately to continue auto attacking once it moves out of range. And then contextually, once you get back into range, you would seamlessly slip back into your melee weaponry.
I think that's a mic drop moment. There we go.
That was pretty good. Yeah, that was pretty good.
I'm seeing, okay, I'm going to fly through some of these now super fast. So Zenton is content expansion on Throne Fast pretty much on hold until AVP and Halner are online. Yes. We are not doing any work on the city itself right now. And Throne Fast is in a good enough place where I feel very confident, very happy with us moving on from it for the time being, and now seeking to get other zones up to the same level that Throne Fast is in. Dosi, will we be able to swap weapons? Okay, just to answer that. Timeline for more mastery points on existing classes. My goal right now is to get the rest of the classes in and have them in a solid place up to level 20, 25 or so before I go back and do another pass on mastery. Kuda, can we get longer times before wipes to try to be able to get to higher levels? I can't promise that. The goal is not to wipe so much that players can't ever get out of the lower levels. I think the time between the last wipe and the one that we're about to do was pretty solid. I would like for it to be not a whole lot quicker than that, and would be happy for it to be longer than that in between wipes as much as we can. But there's just no promises there because it depends on where we're at development-wise. Jop, is your nickname related to the Cursed Kingdom in 1981's Clash of the Titans? That's what comes to mind. My nickname is a secret. It is a well-guarded secret, and at least as of right now, I do not plan on divulging that secret. Will we be testing pockets of AVP before the whole zone comes online? That is very possible. And that actually reflects what I was saying very recently about our approach, especially to brand new zones. So when we start working on a zone that we have, very little content for, then that's absolutely the plan, is that as we develop out smaller portions of that zone, we would bring those portions online and make them available to fast travel to, if they're not congruently connected to the other zones, for testing to happen in those places. I would love to, but I'm not going to get into the cleric direction just yet. We'll probably do some specific current class talk maybe in the next Q&A. That would be a good time to do it. Same with the monk question. Yes, absolutely. There are definitely plans for further Alpha Pledger sessions like the one we're going to be having this weekend, for sure. It is AVP, not AP, Avendir's Pass. I know it doesn't make sense, but that's just what it is. Because there's not a V. There's not like a proper V in there. But it is what it is. Will humans be able to play every class when launch comes around, despite it seemingly not making sense story lore-wise? Somewhat still TBD. They will certainly have the largest amount of classes that they can choose from, but it's not guaranteed that they will be able to pick every single one. Zeos, your question is, I'm not sure. Okay, I think that's just a comment, so I'll read that later. What level do you think it's realistic for us to be able to get to in 24 hours? A lot of us, I would say, as a brand new player coming in, in 24 hours, I'm expecting to see kind of the average player be around somewhere between level 8 and level 12, maybe. Level 10, 11, 12 or so being on the high end of that, but that's if somebody's coming in for this weekend session and they're literally just saying, okay, I've got 24 hours, I'm going like just absolutely all out. I'm going to do nothing but grind, nothing but every kind of, experience gaining activity I can get my hands on. Yeah, like maybe level 12, maybe. But so much of it's going to depend on how densely populated these servers are and how many players are running around doing stuff. That's going to have a lot to do with how quickly people can get up there in level. So be curious to see.
Yeah. I think it's important that people understand that this isn't the only 24-hour session that we're going to do, right, Joppa? There will be other sessions that they can come into later and see more of the game, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and also I don't want the expectation to be that there's going to be a wipe every single time leading up to these Alpha Pledger events, because then all the progress you've made in the first one isn't going to carry over to the second one. That will be the case sometimes, and that's just an expectation to kind of get used to, prepare yourself for that. But as we hopefully and relatively sooner rather than later move to doing these more often, then there will definitely be able to be more continuity between the sessions. But for sure, it is not it is 100% certain that we plan on doing more of these. 100%. I have not played Embers Adrift. I've seen a good deal of gameplay from it, and I have a good sense of what they're about and what they're doing, but I have not actually personally played it. But my, full 100% respect for them and what they're doing, and how they've brought that to a point where they've been able to get it out there, and some of the convictions and things that they've stuck with are commendable. Very, very cool. Okay.
Is that it?
You teased something about the race class matrix. When are you revealing that? Oh yeah, we did tease something about that last Q&A. When are we planning on revealing that?
We did. Well, I mean, we talked about it a little bit. Ben wanted to wait to see how things were going before. I don't know, that this is up to Joppa. Joppa's the boss here. I don't have the ability to just spill beans willy-nilly.
Yeah, let's have an internal chat about that soon.
Yes,
let's figure out an actual goal we can communicate for a date for that, because I'm pretty pumped. I know you are too, and everybody is, and they certainly will be. So
yeah. So we'll chat internally. You guys won't know about it, but we'll know, and maybe eventually we'll let you know.
And by maybe we mean we will. We definitely will. It just a question of when.
Yeah, the truth is that I'm not very good at holding back beans, and I'm not sure Joppa is either. So it'll get out there eventually.
No, I don't like holding back beans. Beans don't sit well with me, like in my stomach, and so I would rather just get them out.
Yep, that's how we get shards.
It's sharts, not shards.
I know.
You got to put the T on the end of that, because if
I can't.
if you're dealing with shards in that manner, that would I don't know. That seems like it would be devastating.
And that's how shards are made.
I've heard it both ways. Listen, bantering is one of my favorite things in the world to do. Dry, unemotional, just hilariously ridiculous bantering. I love dad joke competitions. I love situations where I'm saying ridiculous things very matter-of-factly. And if you're that kind of person, Sav, if you enjoy doing that and you want to, have some bouts of that, I would love it. I would love it.
Of course.
Of course. Now, come on. You got to say more than that. It can't just be like a 2-word response. You have to give me some, something to work with.
I don't joke. I'm very serious. I keep it to the facts. So, yeah, you're going to have to dad joke on your own.
That's fair. How long before we see the upcoming patch notes? Yeah, that's a good question too. I mean, it would be soon, because I think the plan right now is to patch tomorrow and to wipe tomorrow. So I would expect to see patch notes starting to trickle out tomorrow, throughout the day into the evening tomorrow. Somewhere in there. There's a lot going on, a lot we still need to wrap up, and I'm making some monk changes. Got some nice monk updates coming in. I guess we can conclude with that. I can just talk in real time real quickly about some of those things. Did a pass on the monk techniques in general to kind of like I've been doing with the class resistances right now, just to I think we all agree that missing a technique just feels really bad. So trying to reach a similar place with the techniques themselves where they're landing just more consistently and they can be more trusted, as something to execute. So that's good. Also, did a pass. This is more of a polished pass on monks in general, but just realized that a lot of their animations and sound effects and various things just had been overlooked by me in the process of like updating to the new audio stuff and making some of the changes we made recently to the models and the animation and the rigs and things like that. So they should be feeling on a polished level just a lot more, just better in terms of their abilities actually having animations and things like that. Certainly not 100%, but they should be feeling a lot better in that regard. I am doing some. This was a suggestion that came from Biggs and actually our own very own Steve Clover regarding Soul Shuriken, to give it an innate assist radius reduction effect when it hits, to make it a little bit easier for monks to pull using that ability. And I probably won't have it in place by this weekend, but I want to explore that actually scaling as you level up, so that the amount of assist radius reduction actually increases as you get higher level. I'm going to be doing one of the things I want to do tonight is go through the different states that monks can apply to targets, whether it's stunned, knocked down, off balance, things like that. Just want to do a pass on how long those states last. Need to update some of the monk specific techniques to make sure that you have enough time to actually capitalize on those. And also just doing a pass on the technique scaling as well, especially with resonating strike and some of the other monk techniques, just to make sure that damage wise and effect wise they're scaling appropriately as you get higher level. Just take a quick look and make sure there isn't anything.
Sounds like dev time well spent to me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if we have the monk in game, I'm not sure that we really need any of the other classes. So the Matrix is probably fine.
That's fair.
No? You guys disagree? Oh, come on. And in regards to patch notes, the VIPs will get patch notes trickled in, and everyone else will get them whenever Jabba and Neff get them to me. So it's their fault.
Always our fault.
100%. That's why we're the healers.
So there was one last question that Kit Kat actually asked, and I don't know that we really have the time to go into it in detail, but maybe we can save it for our next Q&A. She was wondering about loot rights and how those will work. That feels like a great topic for our next Q&A. What do you think?
That would be good. If you want to copy and paste that and send it to me, I will plop it on the next one.
Will do.
And Des, I can level boost.
Yeah, I think that does it for me. I'll save the rest, put it in the patch notes. But yeah, it's a couple more small things I'm going to do to kind of push the monk forward just a little bit more with some of its pain points. And yeah, I'm excited to see big enchanter changes coming in. Some pretty big paladin changes coming in. Paladin's been really, really fun, really interesting, especially with that new Edict of Celestial Might, the pull ability that they have. They will also eventually get a push ability as well, which I'm super excited to see that in play. But getting the pull in, it works really well. Excited to see it being used, and yeah, lots of nice class updates. So
oh yeah, I'm spending my time off playing the warrior, so
yeah.
All right, guys, thank you all for showing up and hanging out with us. Thank you, Joppa. Thank you, Neff. Love you guys.
Thank you, Sav. Onward and upward, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you both.